Hello, new YouTube member. Guess what? You've just unlocked bonus content that no one else has seen before, and you get exclusive access to some neat features. If you join the Experiencers Anonymous tier, you've unlocked loyalty badges which will appear next to your name when you join us live during any of our videos. The longer you stay with us, the cooler the badge will be. Also, you get to use these cool custom emojis that we made just for you. You also get to access our private Discord chat where we can communicate all the time privately. All you have to do is email us at admin@tessacan.org. Let us know you want in on the discussion and we will send you the link directly to Discord. This tier also unlocks early access to new videos, behind the scenes and blooper footage, as well as some exclusive videos made just for members. All that for $2.99 Canadian a month. If you join the unclassified tier for $4.99 Canadian, you would get everything I just said, plus extended footage of some of our featured videos, a discount to our merch store, and so much more. If you are a member of the unclassified tier, email us at admin@tessacan.org and let us know, and we will send you a discount code for the Paranormal Hangar. All proceeds go back into the mission and help us create educational content for you and the rest of the world. Thank you for being a part of that journey. There are lots of perks, so make sure you check that out. Also, you can use this tab to share and communicate with Tessa. That's it. Unless you have a better idea. If you do, email us at admin@tessacan.org if you have any requests for videos or bonus perks or anything at all. Really, you are in charge. Don't be afraid to reach out. Thanks for your support, and if you know anyone else who may benefit, please share our channel. The more people we have, the more we can help. And thanks for watching. Keep your eyes in the sky. Say it with me. Say it, Tim.
Eat the world.
Eat the world.
This is Lady Anne, owner of KPNL Radio and hostess of the Caravan Library of Lore, and I support Tessa. As an experiencer myself, I have filed my own reports with them, and the professionalism and heart they have shown my case goes above and beyond. If you have had an experience, I cannot recommend Tessa enough.
Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston Zedmore from Ghostbusters. I want to let you know that Brian Stacy, he's created the Experiencer Support Association, TESA. You can check them out at www.tesacan.org. Now, they investigate paranormal, UFO, and provide support to experiencers. But you can check them out at, like I said, www.tesacan.org and see for yourself if they're really Ghostbusters. I can tell you this, they are a non-profit organization. Good luck, have fun, and keep it busted.
Good evening. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencers Support Association. Tessa is a UFO, paranormal, and paracryptid investigation association. We investigate everything belonging to the global phenomenon linked to highly strange and unexplained experiences. We also connect experiencers with other experiencers, creating a safe, positive environment to engage and discuss this phenomenon without judgment, criticism, or retribution. From the land of the white rolling sands, on the southeasterly tip of Georgian Bay, listening around the world as we simulcast live on KPNL Radio, we salute you. If you want to go back and listen to our previous episodes, go to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be instantly notified when we are live, not only for these episodes, but every single element Tessa has to offer. On our website, tessacan.org, we have something for everyone. We have support for experiencers, data for independent researchers, and places to advertise for professional partners.
Good evening. Today is Thursday, June 24th, 2021, and I, Ryan Stacey, am your host this evening. Remember to super chat, click the $sign next to your name in the comment box and choose any amount you want to donate and ask your questions live. If you're catching this on the replay, please consider becoming a member to unlock bonus content, including behind-the-scenes bloopers and extended footage on all our project developments. Our guest for Season 3, Episode 20 is Victor Viggiani. Victor Viggiani is currently the news director of ZlandCommunications, an international news service. His study of the anomalous aerial phenomenon, research and analysis of extraterrestrial issues span over 30 years. His experience involves UFO sightings, sighting reports, investigations, academic and radio journalism, with a primary focus on UFO ET government disclosure. Victor has addressed the media and audiences in Sydney and Brisbane, Australia, Washington D.C, at the Washington D.C National Press Club, Rochester, New York, CBC and CTV Toronto television news programs, and at the Convocation Hall in the University of Toronto. Victor is a regular contributor to the Richard Syrett Show at AM 740 radio in Toronto. As news director, Victor oversees ZlandCommunications, an exclusive Canadian focal point news service providing international coverage, commentary, and the distribution of news and events related to the geopolitical implications of UFO and ET disclosure. Victor's committed goal is to promote and facilitate genuine educational experiences for media, politicians, academic and private institutions, and the general public about the implications of disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence currently engaging the planet. You can contact Victor Viggiani at zland@simpatico.ca. His website is zlandcommunications.blogspot.ca. But wait, there's more. Victor is also the Canadian representative for a new organization called ICER, the International Coalition of Extraterrestrial Research. And Victor and I go way back to my days with MUFON Canada, and this is the first time I've spoken with him professionally since my departure. So Victor, put on your tinfoil hat. How are you doing this evening?
Just fine, thank you. Great to be with you, Ryan. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you. It's been a long time. It's been 3 years. It's kind of, I don't know if you've seen it, but it popped up in my Facebook feed yesterday that 3 years ago, yesterday or 2 days ago is when we had Alien Cosmic Expo in 2018. So it's been a long time. All right. So before we kick it off, we have an icebreaker segment. So the icebreaker is brought to you by Tim the Demon Guy Morrison. So we'll just bring this in here. His first question of the night. Okay, so the icebreaker, basically, he writes a question, Tim the Demon Guy Morrison, and I read him, and it's how we kick off the night. So in 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for?
In 40 years about today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I describe it in two ways.
Okay.
I look at the year 2017 as the pivotal point in what's going on right now. I describe everything that happened before 2017, and I'll explain that in a moment, as the Old Testament of ufology. And I don't like the word ufology, but I'll use it for now in the interim. Everything that happened before 2017 was the Old Testament of what we're all involved in. We had research going on, sighting reports, and all a myriad of different things. But then all of a sudden, the ATIP program came along. The the Pentagon through the initiative of Harry Reid and all of the other people within the Senate. And then they released that information to the New York Times. So Ralph Blumenthal, Helena Cooper, and Leslie Kean published that ice-breaking, to use the pun again, article in the New York Times about the ATIP program that involved Luis Elizondo and the Pentagon and the 7-year program funded by a $22 million grant to the Pentagon to investigate UFOs. Everything that happened after 2017, I label as the New Testament of what's going on. Everything that happened after 2017 was so revelatory that it turned over a huge rock, a massive rock of disclosure. And once that rock was overturned, all of the bugs, so to speak, began scurrying all over the place. And we are at that pivotal point right now, dealing with the 2017 revelations by the Senate at that time. And so that's why I call it the Old Testament and the New Testament. So that's kind of where things started with respect to what's happening right now. And we're just moving forward in some large and small steps with respect to how disclosure is going back to the year 2017 as the pivotal bookmark in the investigation of UFOs and UAP as the main feature of when things really started to change, when disclosure really started to happen, and then who knows where it's going to go from here. So in nostalgically speaking, 2017 was a pivotal year, and in 40 years, people will think back to that year and everything that's happened since then with respect to what the Pentagon has released and what the U.S. Senate's Intelligence Committee is going to be releasing. All of those political things will be the juggernaut, the icebreaker, the huge ship that cuts through the ice of what's really going on right now. And we are hopeful that whatever happens tomorrow with the UAP report being dumped in the lap of the Senate Intelligence Committee, that will begin a new and very, very provocative interplay with respect to what's going to happen now and within the next 40 years. So that's my assessment. And what's going to happen within 40 years, they'll look back to today, this conversation right now with your friends and all of the people that are viewing this. They'll look back today as a piece of history that will in fact be revelatory with respect to what's really going on now and what's to come. That's the important thing about this. What will happen beyond today, tomorrow, and the next day? And that's really important with respect to not just the political aspects of this, but with respect to all of the people, all of the individuals who have in fact experienced contact with these off-world civilizations with respect to the so-called abduction phenomenon and all of that. So it's really important that we understand that this, what we're doing right now, we are making history right now, Ron. People will look back at this day, this broadcast, and many like it as a pivotal point.
I'm having trouble with the connection. Please try again in a moment.
With respect to that. So that's my assessment of that question.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. That was the best answer that anyone has ever provided off of one of Tim's off-the-cuff icebreaker questions. So thank you so much, Tim, for asking that question. And thank you, Victor, for that answer. So that is the summary of tonight's episode, which is essentially what we want to get into. But before we get there, I kind of set this up just a little bit here to give some context to everybody and for our own kind of nostalgic kind of feedback here. So in 2016 is when we first met at the Alien Cosmic Expo. You had expressed to this panel down here on the right, which we got Paul Hellyer. So we got Hellyer, Cameron, Friedman, Pope, Bassett, Walton, and Dolan. So you all expressed to them a declassified NORAD document. And then, so before we get into that, I thought that maybe you could express to our audience and even from my own public knowledge, how you first got into this, especially when I understand that you used to be an elementary school principal in Toronto. So how did you end up from here, like up to this moment in 2016, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, well, basically, in 1975. I was up in my cottage in Barrie, Ontario, for those people just north of Toronto. and I was shopping in a mall in Barrie, and my wife was doing some other shopping, and I was wandering, and I went into a Kohl's bookstore and just wandering around as people do, and I happened upon the so-called New Age section, and I saw this book called Revelations by Jacques Vallée, and I really had never given UFOs or anything like that any kind of even a second thought. I just picked it up and paged through it, and the forward looked interesting. I read a few pages, and okay, I'm going to buy this book. So I brought it home, and it was a relatively small book called Revelations by Jacques Vallée. And those people who are current with this issue will well recognize who Jacques Vallée is. So I'll leave that to them. So I brought the book back to the cottage and sat down that evening and read the book, and was just completely blown away by what Jacques about this issue of UFOs. And I didn't really digest or understand everything about it. And I must admit, it was very confusing. So that summer, I read the book 4 times before I really understood what was going on. And from that point, I began to have an understanding of what this issue was all about. And then from that, I became involved in MUFON with respect to UFO sightings and reports and everything. And then after that, I became involved in a radio program here in Toronto called Strange Days Indeed with the host Errol Bruce Knapp. I was a co-host on CFRB, and we interviewed, Errol and I interviewed all of the key figures. And I'm talking about all of the key figures back in the late 1980s and the show lasted 15 years. So we were in touch with all of the major figures, researchers, authors, with respect to the UFO issue. So that gave me a foundation in all of this and brought me to the understanding that this situation was not about UFO sightings or UFO craft or reports, or this was all about it wasn't about lights in the sky. It was all about the lies on the ground, about the political implications and the way the U.S. government and other governments were lying to the general public about what this issue was all about. It was a very bad tasting situation with respect to how we are being lied to. So that brought me to the point of the political reality of what's going on. And as an activist and journalist, since then, I've been pushing for UFO disclosure and doing everything that I can to report that in ZlandCommunications and to bring an educational component so that people understand that there are many tentacles to this whole issue, being political, technological, and also with respect to experiencers. So that brought me to the point of understanding that everything is all related. And then secondarily, my relationship with Dr. John Mack in understanding what he did with respect to it, and visiting him in his Harvard office and understanding that he had people who were going through extremely difficult situations with respect to the abduction phenomenon. And I shared with him not only my own experience with people that I was dealing with, but UFO experiences and abduction experiences, or with children, with their artwork. So we became very close, and as a result, I became not only well-versed in all of this, but completely convinced that the contact aspect to this whole phenomenon was probably the kernel of where we're at. There are other political implications and all of that, but my relationship with Dr. John Mack really showed me that the contact element, the experiencers, are where it's happening with respect to how these off-world civilizations, the extraterrestrial community out there, is attempting to make contact with us as a species. I mean, we are very far behind the curve with respect to their development, but they are trying to bring us up to speed as to what's happening in the cosmos, and hopefully the contactees will be a conduit through which diplomatic relations can be established between our fledgling civilization here on the planet and the extremely sophisticated, technologically advanced and intelligent beings that are out there. So that's very quickly where I'm at, where I've been, and where we're headed.
And then 3 years later, you are announced as a member of ICER, International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. Mm-hmm. So is anything, this is the first time I've talked to you in 3 years, and this is the reason why we reconnected, is because I'm interested in understanding this new wave of things. So what happened between that moment up until now, And then what is ICER? That as being the Canadian representative, how is that important? How can investigators like myself and assist, I guess, in some sense?
Yeah, that's a good sort of standoff point. The International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research was an initiative began by our Vice President, Gary Hesseltine, and also Don Schmidt, the Roswell investigator. Those two had an initiative planned whereby they established, to begin with, a Chinese initiative to bring forward all of the information with respect to the extraterrestrial presence. So that initiative was sidetracked. So Don Schmidt and Gary Hesseltine decided to begin their own initiative, their own citizens initiative with respect to the extraterrestrial issue. So they formulated a plan that included developing an initiative to represent a number of international countries. So far, we have 27 representatives over 5 continents from countries who are involved in attempting to represent each country, first of all. And then once we get 30 representatives, we will be able to financially, legally, and interpretatively to contact the UN to present to them and the idea that we are in fact being engaged. So that's our long-term goal. So these 30 representatives hopefully will be the standoff point where we can approach the UN to have them begin a dialogue and initiative where we can talk about the UFO issue, the UAP issue, in a rational, political, and essentially meaningful way, so that everyone on the planet can begin to become engaged in this. So that's the idea behind ICER. So we're going to develop awareness programs, develop institutional programs where we can educate the general public and the media and people like yourselves to the fact that we are in fact being engaged by off-world civilizations, and how we can develop a discourse, a narrative about that within the UN. So that's where we're headed. It's going to take some time, but that's our ultimate goal.
Now, how important is that we have that, with everything that's leading up, with all the and also I wanted to recognize the effort that you put in to get to this point. And I want to, for our audience listening, keep in mind he was a school principal at the time. So like the background, like starting point, there's a lot of us who come from different walks of life that are putting in a tremendous amount of service to ufology. And this is huge for everyone. And so thank you, Victor, for your service so far. And thank you for everything that you're about to do. So where are we at in respects to, I guess, Canada and the disclosure movement that is supposed to happen tomorrow? So what is happening tomorrow, and how Canada perceive that? What's Canadian perspective on this?
Well, what's going to happen tomorrow is a bit of an unknown. It's quite clear that I've been in discussion with the solicitor for Luis Elizondo, the lawyer Danny Sheehan. I don't know if your audience is familiar with Daniel Sheehan's work, but he's a former Watergate lawyer. He was involved in the Karen Silkwood case. He was the general counsel for the Jesuit Council here in the United States. He was a member of a team that began investigation into the Vatican files of UFOs. So Danny has a very well steeped understanding and experience with the UFO issue. So he's currently representing Luis Elizondo with respect to this issue. So the understanding that he has and Luis Elizondo has about what's coming tomorrow is just sort of a curtain opener. It's sort of like a first stage of what might happen with respect to how the government will frame this issue. And by no means do we expect the government, the UAP report tomorrow, to be the be-all and the end-all of disclosure. It will not reveal everything that we want. It will reveal some of what we want. There are going to be 73 total pages of revelations, 58 of which will be classified, and I think about another 22 or 23 will remain public. So we don't know what's going to happen with those revelations. We don't know which way it will turn. But the Senate Intelligence Committee, headed by Mark Warner and co-chaired by Marco Rubio, will have to determine how they interpret that document or those files and those revelations, and then make some sort of determination publicly as to what it all means. And we are convinced that what's going to happen tomorrow will be a couple of things. First of all, it will describe the UAP issue as a national security threat. That's kind of where I think they're going to go. And we're sort of all agreed to that the United States government and the military really have no other alternative to frame it that way. That will be their initial response. The second thing that we need to understand is that recognizing what's going on in the skies, the way the military has, and translating it into the technologies that come from Russia or China is the biggest, intelligence failure within the United States in over 70 years. They've completely misread what is going on. There is absolutely no way that these technologies are Russian or Chinese or anything else other than off-world origins. There's no chance that anything that's happening right now is in fact Russian, Chinese, or American. We just do not have the technology. Some countries may be experimenting with it, but there's no way that we have craft that can move at 43,000 miles an hour in our own atmosphere and not burn up or create a sonic boom. There is no way that we have craft that can move underwater at 200 and 300 knots, underwater. We just do not have that technology. So the only other alternative at this stuff is off-world in origin. Now, that amount of information will be very difficult for the general public to digest, and they will try to frame that information in a way that will be meaningful to the U.S. public and even international community, so that they can develop their own framework of funding more and more weaponry to fight against or to counter whoever these extraterrestrials are as a national security threat. That's the way they're going to frame it. But eventually they will move away from that position in the realization that there is no way that we have any kind of weaponry that can counteract who these extraterrestrials are. So it's just a very small step. Tomorrow will be a very small step in the realization that the government knows what these things are, and they will have to develop some sort of framework to explain it to the American public. And that will be the only first step in the public understanding what might be going on. So we're fearful that the American public and the media will buy into the threat scenario, and not the scenario whereby we are in fact being engaged by benevolent off-world civilizations. So we've got a pretty difficult road to hoe with respect to that. So disclosure, on one hand, it sounds great. It sounds like a really good opportunity for all of us. But on the other hand, the way it's being framed by the American government could be, in some ways, disastrous. So that's our position on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really do, because for me personally, throughout this entire thing, and also handling questions myself, the document itself is evidence. So everything else, including this conversation, but with you having inside information as well. But I mean, it is speculation, but you have inside information. So you're so you're coming from credible sources, right? So when we have the media spinning everything right now, so that's a plus. The fact that the media is touching it, which is a huge advancement in general. On other terms, because before it was taboo. So that's still a positive on all those other things. Right. I've always been concerned of how the public is going to interpret it as well. So I mentioned this already. I was intently listening, but I was just thinking that once they release the document, and you said they're going to have to provide an explanation, which they go hand in hand, but is that going to be done tomorrow as well? Or are we just going to get it and then we have to interpret it, and then that explanation is going to come later?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. The committee will get the report if they don't already have it, and then once they do get it, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, I don't see any way. This is just my own personal opinion. I don't see any way that they could receive the report yesterday or the day before or through briefings or even tomorrow, whereby they can digest all of this information, all of the pages within this document, and make some sort of logical pronouncement about what it's all about. I don't see any way that can happen. They have to look at the documentation. All the members of the committee have to review it, have their lawyers look at it, have their representatives look at it, something with it that makes logical sense to the constituency and to the Senate committee altogether, and then to other committees within the Senate. So they're going to have to review this stuff, and that could take more time. So I don't think anything specific is going to happen tomorrow in terms of a huge revelation. It's not going to come out like a gangbuster all of a sudden tomorrow. It's just going to be dropped in their lap. And I think the Intelligence Committee in the Senate is going to have to review the documents and make some determination as to what they're going to talk about publicly and what they're going to talk about behind the scenes. And then we'll go from there. And if these people who get this report from the Director of National Intelligence, which is by law mandated, that the Director of National Intelligence is mandated by law to report to the Senate committee, so he's got to do that. That's law. So in that effect, what has to happen is a review of this information, and then eventually that Senate committee is going to make some of that or all of it public. And then from there, they're going to have to make a determination as to where they go from there. And our estimation, hopefully, is that if the Senate committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, is wise enough, and I use that word advisedly, if they're wise enough, the only move they have after they get everything, once they digest it and ruminate over it, the only move they have is to hold public hearings, calling in a Senate committee with their own committee, or developing an ad hoc committee to deal with this UAP situation, and call forth military, government, and public witnesses to testify before Congress or the Senate as to the reality of what these pilots have been through, what the military has been through, not just within the context of, since 2004, and even 70 years of when this stuff all began. And our point is that the Senate committee and this report seems to be founded upon what's happened only within the last 5 or 6 years. And that is a falsehood. This stuff is not new information. This is not 7 or 8 or 10 years old. This stuff is 40 to 70 years old. These things have been coming and going within our own atmosphere for well over 70 years and possibly even longer. Roswell happened, although they won't address that. The Twining report was very descriptive about it. They won't deal with that. So in a sense, they're misrepresenting what's going on by only focusing on what's going on now and not what's happened in the past over 70 years. So that's how this information is being manipulated and being sort of framed in a way that this stuff is new information. All of a sudden, the American public is going to say, oh my goodness, UFOs have been happening over the past 10 or 15 years. That's an absolute blatant falsehood. And we have to deal with the fact that they're framing it that way along with the threat scenario. So we've got a lot to do to educate the general public about how this information is coming down, why it's coming down, and why the military is only dealing with a very, very, very small segment of the UAP phenomenon.
No, I agree with you on that for sure. So looking into the history of how this developed, 2017, the ATIP program, these three videos, or 4 now, I can't remember, I can't keep up, but that have been, I would say, Pentagon authenticated, that are being reviewed, that's being circulated in the media, and the whole premise of the push for this said report. From the investigator perspective, and the legal perspective on my end, I only foresee them having to comment on those items only, because those are the only items that are available to the public that a public can confirm have happened. So with that in context, in your opinion, are they likely to add more? Or if they say that these things are or a two-part question, are they likely to add more to this because they really don't have to, in the sense we hope by the request that means that, but we also have to be specific, and they might just give us everything about those 4 videos and that's it. But then again, if they say that these are off-world technology and all these other things, well, and imply that or infer that, So the second part of that question is, how do experiencers who are not using investigative tools like Tessa and MUFON and other organizations like that, how are we going to prevent them from using that as an example that what they're experiencing is linked to that, and that's not military or something else or aerial phenomenon?
Yeah, well, you've asked two loaded questions.
Yeah.
With respect to the last part of your question, I would exhort experiencers and contactees who've been through this stuff as the first contact element within the human species. They all know what's going on for the most part. Some of them are confused by their experiences. Some of them want to deny their experiences. Some of them want to try to understand it. Some have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. Some are dealing with it in a very positive way. But my suggestion to experiencers right now is to stand by, to go on hold, just stay with your experiences, hold them tightly, become convinced of them, which you already are. Your day will come. You have to stand by with respect to what's happening right now, because, as I mentioned earlier, it will be very difficult for any of these experiencers and for your group and other contactee groups to make their case right now. It's just not the right time at this point. I wish it would be. I wish that would be something that we could do tomorrow, but I don't think the general public and the media and the government are able right now to digest the contactee experience. So my suggestion to people, they've held this close to them for many years. And the contact experience, the abducting experience, has been going for a long time. They're going to have to just wait till their right time to flush through politically. And once it gets flushed through politically, once we understand that these craft are not from here, and it's a big step to do that, and then B, that we are actually in fact being engaged by off-world civilizations. Once those two things are assimilated by the general population and ruminated over and discussed and analyzed and educated, and once the general public begins to realize all of that, then they'll go through the same experience that I've been through, the same experience that you've been through. They'll eventually realize that the contact experience comes from UFO sightings and all of that. It emanates from all of that. And we just have to bide our time and wait for that to become understood by the general public. And once that's done, then the experiencers will have a clear pathway through which to express their contention that we are in fact not only being engaged by off-world civilizations, but these off-world civilizations have in fact made contact with a huge number of human beings on this planet, a huge number. And once that's understood, the contactees will be able to come forward, express their views, tell their story, and become the diplomats that we need in order to engage who these off-world civilizations are and ask them questions like, what do you want from us? What can we provide you? How can we engage so that we can solve some of the crappy problems that we're going through, the environment, the desecration of our environment, the use of nuclear weapons, and all of those things that I describe as extinction behaviors. And the questions will come from not the politicians, not the military. They'll come from experiencers to ask the ETs, who are you? Why are you here? What do you want from us? And how can you help us? So I would just exhort experiencers to stand back, stand by, and hold on until your day comes, because it will come soon. And we've waited 40 years for disclosure. I think we can wait another 1 or 2 till this flushes through the system and the politics and all of it goes through its realm of authenticity, and then eventually the public will understand that there are a huge number of human beings, species on our planet that actually experience contact, and that's going to be another huge revelation, and even bigger than disclosure itself with respect to the UAP issue. So that's how I would frame the issue with respect to contactees and what might come next.
So to add on to that, and I agree with you, I just want to provide context that the whole premise of me creating the Experiencers Support Association is on that foreshadowing that I also foresee a disclosure happening for some time with my work with MUFON, but there was no plan for what happens after disclosure or during disclosure. So this living in this time for us is great, because that sense of knowing it was coming in my lifetime, and now we're getting ready. We're ready to receive anyone who may be able to that may need some sort of resources once this document comes out. So I'm happy that to be able to share this moment with you in that too, and we're lining up on our thought waves here too. So the other loaded question, I guess, was whether or not we think that the government is going to be nice enough to share more than they need. What do you think?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. For decades now, for 70 years, the intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI, the NRO, have made a practice and celebrated the practice of deceiving the general public. Has been and died. That's how they operate. They do not operate telling the truth, and they've never done it, and they probably never will. So our assessment, not just my assessment, but generally speaking, the people within the political community, or the activist community, I should say, are convinced that we will not be able to get authenticity from the CIA, the FBI, the NRO, the NSA, NASA, and all of those alphabet organizations. We will never get the full story from them, because their basic mode of operation is deception. It's always been that way. That's what the CIA does. They're founded on deception and deceiving people. So why should we believe anything that they say? So that is why Daniel Sheehan and Luis Elizondo and Mark Sims, if you're familiar with those names, you can look them up. They are moving towards stepping aside from the government and creating this citizens diplomacy initiative to allow citizens, contactees, and other people who are concerned about this, to begin to tell the story to the media about what's really happening, not through the filter of the deceptive information of the CIA, the NRO, and the NSA, and all those agencies that have been lying to us over the past 70 years. We have to find a way to get through that veil of secrecy, that veil of deception, to authenticate the information about the extraterrestrial presence to the general public, and then have the general public understand it from a point of view of diplomatic engagement. And we firmly believe that if these races are who they pretend to be, or who are purporting to be, if they are in fact as intelligent and sentient and advanced, highly advanced as they are, they will hopefully move towards a direct contact mode with us rather than dealing with government. And they will not want to just deal with the American government. They don't want to deal with the CIA, the NRO, or the NSA, and all those other alphabet organizations. That would be a detriment to their credibility. And if they do engage the CIA, then we'll know that they're not authentic either. But we don't think that that's where they're going to go. They want to communicate directly with the human species, with the human family, with us, with you and I, with contactees. They don't want to deal with governments, because we know that governments are involved in extinction behaviors that will eventually, down the road, eliminate the human species with respect to nuclear weapons, plastics in the ocean, the degradation of our environment, the pumping of fossil fuels into the environment. All of these things are something that corporate America and corporate international corporations are set on doing. That's what their agenda is. And we need to sidestep that agenda and begin a cooperative element, which is diplomatic in nature, with these off-world civilizations directly, not through government. So that's where we're headed, and that's what's going to happen as far as how the human species has to view what's going on. We cannot view this through the lens of the CIA or the government. So we're not going cap in hand to say to the government, "Oh, please tell us what's going on." That is a falsehood. That is a misnomer, and it is a misdirection. It is a sleight of hand on the part of government to get us to become cooperative with them in dealing with the extraterrestrial species. This is not a government issue. This is our issue. This is an issue of the human family, not government.
I'm tracking that, and you know, like there's a lot of issues within any government about multiple things that we could go on the same subject, on the same way, in the same manner, and come to the same conclusion that it's hard to trust them with everything. And with that, like I've always remained neutral on this Lou Elizondo guy, you know, because there's just as much information that can discredit his motive just as much as well as we can credit his motive. So there's things that we can trust, there's things that we can't, there's things we can accept, there's things that we can't. But all in all, at the end of the day, we can't ignore the fact that the actions have created these reactions, and therefore here we are. Now, with what you've just said in terms of trust, how likely, or how is it even possible for others to trust, say, Lou enough that everybody in the world would report to him? And then what about Canada? Like why can't, like, is that where ICER would come in? Is that where, like, and then also, not that I want to hog all the work, but where, you know, am I out of a job? Like how, you know, like where does that fit for you if all, like, us researchers and investigators that are currently doing all this work to assist, just to have a guy come in and say, hey, talk to us now? Like, it's good. It's great for the world on the global thing. But is it a takeover, or is it really too good? Like, it's almost too good to be true. You understand my hesitation here? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying I'm on that neutral line, but it's a wide way. How do we trust this?
Well, my level of trust is embedded in Daniel Sheehan. I've known Daniel as a friend and colleague. My goodness, I'm talking now to over 20 years. And Daniel was involved in the Carter administration with respect to their invitation to him to go to the Vatican to find out about UFO files as the representative of the Jesuit Council. And he was given that mandate back well over 20 years ago. The Carter administration asked him to do that. He did it twice unsuccessfully. The Vatican denied him access to the files. He's also made it plain that Jimmy Carter went to the CIA director at the time, George Bush Sr., and just before his inauguration, Jimmy Carter asked Bush for the UFO file. And because Jimmy Carter had a vested interest in UFOs at the time for a number of reasons. And the CIA director denied the president-elect access to those files. And Danny was involved in that. He was also involved in the Karen Silkwood case, if people want to involve that. So my level of trust is in Daniel Sheehan. And Daniel Sheehan was approached by Luis Elizondo because the U.S. Pentagon was in attack mode about Luis Elizondo's credentials. We knew, and we do know right now, that Luis Elizondo was in fact the executive director of the ATIP program. He was the chief security officer for the ATIP program, and he resigned out of frustration. He got out. He got out quick because what they were doing was totally detrimental to the UFO release or disclosure initiative, and he got out. He quit the organization, and he took the 3 UFO files that had been, sent over the internet for the past, 4 or 5 years. He took those files with him, gave them to Chris Mellon. He and Chris Mellon founded the To the Stars Academy. So in frustration, Luis Elizondo separated himself from the U.S. intelligence community because they were doing the wrong thing in approaching the UFO issue, the UAP issue, in a completely the wrong way. It was a threat scenario that he wasn't willing to go along. So Luis Elizondo's work there and him approaching Daniel Sheehan for assistance and getting into a situation where he could be represented by Daniel Sheehan, going back to the Inspector General and say the U.S. Pentagon has to stop lying about his former executive position, and they filed a complaint May the 3rd of this year to force the Pentagon to retract their attacks Susan Goff, the head of the Pentagon Public Relations Committee, was attacking Luis Elizondo hand over foot about his relationship, saying that he had no connection with the ATIP program, which was in fact going back with Daniel Sheehan to go into attack mode if they have to counter their attacks and their challenges to him. So I have every reason to believe that Daniel Sheehan would never, knowing him the way I do, take on the solicitorship for Luis Elizondo if he did not believe that Luis Elizondo was truly credible in his insistence that he knows going with the ATIP program, what it's all about. So I trust Luis Elizondo's representation about this, and he's not the go-to person. He does not want to represent the entirety of this. All he is attempting to do is show the Pentagon used the wrong approach to the UAP issue, and he wanted to get this information out, and they did not want to do that. So he represented a faction within the Pentagon at the time to want this information out. And he was countered by factions within the Pentagon who didn't want this out. That's why he got away from the Pentagon investigation program. So I have every reason to believe that Luis Elizondo is authentic. He may have made mistakes. He may have said things in the past representing the Pentagon, but that's all behind him. He wants to get this information out to the general public in the realization that we are dealing with off-world technologies, off-world existence, and off-world contact. And that's his mandate. And make no mistake about it, Daniel Sheehan would not represent Luis Elizondo if that, in fact, was not the case. So it's not putting anybody out of a job. Our jobs are very safe. We still have to, frame this stuff in an educational way so that the general public understands it. But the fact of the matter is that this UAP report will be a whitewash. It will not contain all the information that we need. So that's why we need people like Daniel Sheehan and Luis Elizondo to set the record straight about what the Pentagon is doing and what they're not doing, and how they may continue the lie factor, the falsehoods that will proffer this information as U.S. technology or Chinese technology or Russian technology, which will be a falsehood. So we have to set the record straight with why Daniel and Luis are doing this. They want to get the information out straight and good and clean. And that's where I'm laying my cards, and that's where I'm laying my trust. So
is Sheehan pro bono this, or is Lou Elizondo paying him for?
I have no idea.
Yeah, would that matter?
I have no idea. I don't get involved in that kind of. Daniel has taken on many causes. He represented with family, and they got a settlement from the government in the millions of dollars because of the murder of Karen Silkwood. I have no idea how Danny profited from that. My estimation, in any kind of way that I've asked him to assist before, he has never asked a dime from me. So I don't know anything about that, and I wouldn't even suggest that might be the case.
Because I work with lawyers too, so there's that. Just the money's the motive too, right? So you got just something I just thought of while you were mentioning that too. So the other thing you mentioned, and we got about 6 minutes before we get to our first commercial, and this has been an intense half segment, so this is good. You mentioned evidence. So what hard evidence exists that proves that Lou is not lying?
Hard evidence is his word. He is committed to it. He has the.
He worked for ATIP. Remember, they say his credentials. They challenged his credentials because there was no evidence he was in the program. And then Sheehan states that he is. So what evidence besides their word exists that happened?
Well, he was appointed. He was appointed the executive director of ATIP, and he was also the chief security. That is on the record. There's documentation that he was in fact the lead executive director of it, right. and he was also the chief security.
No, I understand.
I know what else to say.
No, it just sounded like there was only verbal testimony. So I just wanted to make sure there was supporting.
No, I mean there's
yeah.
Well, supporting documents, you'd have to you look into that yourself. But he was appointed by the committee, by the people who funded this thing, the $22 million that Harry Reid gave to the Pentagon, and he was appointed the executive director and the chief security officer. I don't know much more that I can tell you about that. I don't have the document in the back pocket, but that's in fact the case.
No, I understand. I just I'm neutral. I have questions for Lou. I've never had the opportunity to speak to him, so you're the closest guy to him at the moment, because I'm just realizing that you've known so much. So these are just questions that I had that I have answers for. Don't worry about it. I'm not putting you on your spot. Thank you for answering those.
Well, I've interviewed Lou myself twice, and it's quite clear that whatever Susan Goff is telling the public about his relationship or his position in the ATIP program, what she is saying is absolutely a falsehood. I mean, he's willing to state that up front, and he probably has his own documentation himself. So, I mean, why would I question that? Why would he put himself in a position to eventually be found out as a liar? He doesn't operate that way. That's just not who he is. And that's why I go back to Daniel Sheehan's representation. If Daniel Sheehan felt that Luis Elizondo was in any way fudging his credentials, Danny would drop him like a hot potato, and that's not the case. Luis Elizondo was the authentic executive director of the program and the chief security officer, and let's just leave it at that.
And that was a civilian position, though, right? Military.
I don't know. He was an intelligence officer before that. But as a civilian, I don't know anything about his position while he was there. I really don't know anything about that.
No, the reason I'm asking the question is I pulled his public record, and there's no record to prove he was in military service. So that's why I was asking.
Oh, no, that's not correct. There is public record that he was a member of the military at one point. Oh, yes, for sure.
I'll clarify on that later, but it's okay. That's why I was asking the question. It's all good. So we're going to head to commercial now. And then we'll get back into, I want to know, actually, you know what? I got a good question when we get back from commercial. So I'm just going to read my little thing here. And thank you so much, Victor. I didn't mean to turn it up a little bit there too. And again, we're talking in theory about a person that is not here, and going on both sides of the fence here, because it's intense. It's very intense to what's going on in these days. And from my perspective, to cater to the experiencer perspective who doesn't know what to believe, I'm just weighing both sides until it all gets sorted out. But at the end of the day, what's recognized, regardless of motive or intent or however the deal went down, we're talking about it on a global level, and that needs to be recognized. So I'm totally with you there.
Well, the global aspect of all this is probably bigger than any other aspect to this whole issue. This is not about the United States of America. It's not about the UK or any individual government. This is a global situation that we have to deal with, and that should be the tip-off point, the joining point of how our discussion moves forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we'll pause right here. And we'll continue after a message from our professional partners. Also, if you're listening to this live on KPNL Radio or a featured podcast, head over to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association to see the video that goes with the audio. Remember,